Okay. Mr. Wright, welcome today. We're glad to have you here. I'm not very loud. Now I am. Okay. I don't need to be very loud. We appreciate you being here. I think what we're going to do with this interview is get you sworn in, and then we will get you to make a statement. But we'll go ahead and let Ms. Wheat do the swearing in first.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Great, Mr. Wright, welcome. Before we start with questions and that kind of thing, tell us about yourself. Let's get any kind of statement that you'd like to make before we begin, and we'll proceed from there.
There you go. Thank you very much, Chairman Randall. Honorable Commissioners, thank you all very much for inviting me to come talk to you all today and for considering me for assisting the Commission in this important work. My full name is Robert Sheffel Wright. I go by Chef. I have worked in energy matters for nearly 39 years, first as an economist and later as a second career attorney. I became a member of the Florida Bar in 1992. I've worked in energy in many different capacities. I worked as an analyst for the Governor's Energy Office in Florida under Governor Bob Graham. I served on the Public Service Commission staff of Florida for not quite 7 years, and since I left the commission staff to go to law school, I've practiced continuously in energy matters in the private sector. I have worked in, like I said, worked on the commission staff, advised the Public Service Commission. I've testified on cost of service matters in Florida, Indiana, and Michigan as a sponsor of cost of service studies. I wrote the production cost, embedded production cost allocation methodology chapter in the NARUC cost of service manual. And I have represented a wide range of clients, consumers. I represent the Florida Retail Federation. I've represented a number of individual consumers, customers in various matters before our Florida Public Service Commission. I represent renewable energy producers, qualifying facilities, in independent power producers. I represent municipal utilities, municipal electric utilities in Florida. I represent a number of municipalities in Florida who have various issues with their utilities, mainly franchise agreements and undergrounding. I've worked extensively in energy conservation, cogeneration, solar, and renewable biomass as well. I have drafted power purchase agreements. I have personally calculated avoided costs, starting from the utilities' published basic cost information as to the capital cost of their projects with their O&M, and then converted that into revenue requirements to assist my clients. I've assisted clients, I've negotiated PPAs, and like I said, I've been on all sides. I've even wound up on the same side as the utilities a couple of times in transmission line cases and in energy conservation matters. In summary, I'd just like to thank you all for having me up here and considering me for this important assignment. I've reviewed your energy policy, your Energy Freedom Act. I've reviewed the draft contract that Ms. Boyd sent me a couple of weeks ago. And I'll tell you, I've done everything there is in the contract more than a couple of times. I saw a question somewhere, how many times have you appeared before public service commissions as counsel of record, and it's, I don't know, probably a couple 100, 300 times in the last 30 years, different dockets, that is. I greatly appreciate your consideration. I am fully confident that I can do a real good job for y'all, and I hope you'll give me the opportunity to help you with this important work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I know we have commissioners have questions, and commissioners will just, Commissioner Belzer, you've got your light on, but we'll just go when you, after Commissioner Belzer, just step up and ask your questions.
Good morning, Mr. Wright.
Good morning.
Just a couple of I don't say rules, but when I refer to you, I'm talking about a broad you. You and any of your partners or folks in your firm that may help you, or consultants that you may pull together as a team. So I'm talking about a broad you of anybody. Like if I say, do any of you, do you have any conflicts? I'm talking about anybody that you might have working with you, as well as yourself individually.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
And when I talk, and if I ask about electric utilities, I'm primarily interested in regulated utilities and specifically interested in our jurisdictional utilities here in South Carolina being Duke Energy Carolinas, Duke Energy Progress, and Dominion, or formerly SCE&G. But if your answer includes any other types of utilities that you may have worked with, if you could just identify those as well. But I'm primarily interested in Duke, any of the Duke entities and any of the Dominion entities that might be. So just as we go along, if you don't mind.
I understand, and I will answer accordingly.
Thank you. Looking at your resume on page 2, I note under representative clients that you've listed Ecoplexus,
Yes, ma'am.
and you've represented them in Florida, is my understanding.
That is correct, only in Florida.
Okay. Now, they have intervened in the docket here in South Carolina. Is that a conflict for you?
It's certainly not a conflict in the legal sense, and I will say to you, I don't believe it's a conflict at all. My views on avoided costs are clear and long-standing, and they won't matter. They will not be affected by the intervention of Ecoplexus up here.
Have you worked, or, I mean, to the extent you can answer this without violating any kind of privilege, have you advised or worked with Ecoplexus or their work here in South Carolina? Have you worked with them in any manner, however slight?
I have not discussed any of their work in South Carolina other than they have told me they are actively pursuing projects in South Carolina and North Carolina and elsewhere in their sphere of business.
I'll also note under your representative clients that you've listed Duke Energy North America. Are you in a position that you can tell us where that work may have happened and a brief synopsis? And
yes.
It's not I don't want it to impinge on any privilege information.
Thank you very much, and yes, I am. Duke, there were a couple of different Duke higher-up subsidiaries involved in some work that I did in 1998 to 2000. It was Duke Energy North America and Duke Energy Power Services. Ultimately, the entity whom I represented in Florida was a special purpose entity named legally Duke Energy New Smyrna Beach Power Company Limited, LP. That was a subsidiary. I'm not even sure how it fell down in the org chart, but I believe it was a subsidiary under Duke Energy Power Services. We referred to it as Duke New Smyrna. As I mentioned, this representation was approximately 20 years ago. Duke New Smyrna partnered with the Utilities Commission of New Smyrna Beach, a municipal electric utility in Florida, for the purpose of developing a 530 megawatt gas-fired power plant. New Smyrna Beach, the municipal utility, was going to take 30 megawatts of the capacity of that project for its own use. The balance, Duke New Smyrna was going to sell as merchant capacity in Florida. I represented them through what we call the need determination proceeding in Florida. It's very similar to a proceeding for a certificate of public convenience and necessity or a certificate of need. Those are terms that are virtually analogous. At our Public Service Commission, it was challenging. It was opposed by all 4 of the big investor-owned public utilities in Florida. We prevailed at the PSC. Unfortunately for my clients, the IOUs in Florida appealed to the Florida Supreme Court, and the Public Service Commission's order granting the determination of need was overturned on jurisdictional grounds. To be clear, the entity on the other side, I represented the Duke sub, Duke New Smyrna. The entity on the other side The entities on the other side were Florida Power and Light Company, Progress Energy Florida, Tampa Electric Company, and Gulf Power Company. Progress Energy Florida is now Duke Energy Florida, LLC. So I was actually in a pro-competitive position advocating for competitive power in Florida against the entity that is now Duke Energy Florida.
And that was my next question. At the time of that proceeding, the merger between Duke Energy and, formerly Carolina Power, then Progress Energy,
Right.
that was prior to that merger.
By quite a bit, I think.
And so Duke Energy was not, or the entity that you were working with in Duke Energy was not an incumbent IOU in Florida at the time.
That is correct, yeah. In fact, we were opposite the company that is now bears that name.
If you are selected as this commission's independent consultant, would you describe the process that you would use to conduct the analysis needed of each electric utility's avoided cost calculations?
Certainly. I would start by looking at whatever public data there is. I'm not sure exactly what they may have filed with you. I know they have to file a FERC Form 1 every year, and I'm familiar with those. To give, this is by way of example. In reading your act, I see that your legislature has now required that the investor owns, I think, and the Public Service Authority also, now have to file integrated resource plans. In Florida, basically all generating utilities above a certain threshold have to file annually what we call a 10-year site plan. It's like an integrated resource plan. In those plans, they have to publish information regarding any units they intend to add to their fleet over the next 10 years, including construction start date, technology, estimated cost, AFUDC, annualized O&M cost, escalation rates both for capital and O&M, and so on. I don't know if you have that kind of information readily available for you here in South Carolina. If you do, that's where I'll start. If you don't, my first set of data requests will be, tell me about every unit y'all plan to add to each of the IOUs, your jurisdictional IOUs, that is. My first set of data requests will be, identify each and every generation addition you propose to add in the next 10 years. In consultation with staff, we might choose a different time period, but 10 years seems like a good one to me. And then I would specifically ask for the estimated capital cost, the estimated O&M cost, escalation rates, AFUDC rates, weighted average cost of capital, estimated life, which would give us the depreciation rates. And from this data, and probably some others, but from this data, I would come up with estimates of their avoided revenue requirements or their revenue requirements if they were to build their unit. That'd be the first thing I'd do, and I'll bet there'd be some follow-up.
Well, I will tell you that the IOUs do file as their annual report their FERC Form 1s.
Yes, ma'am.
We accept those as their annual reports, and they do file IRPs here
Okay.
in South Carolina. I can't say that the specificity that you've named is all in the IRPs, but
One way or the other,
file it.
we'll get to it.
And the Act does allow for the consultant to propound discovery requests to the
Yes, ma'am, I'm aware of that.
And would you, I'm going to ask a couple of things here. Explain your experience or familiarity with solar integration cost studies and quantification of integration services cost. Solar integration cost studies?
I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that term. It sounds like it refers to cost of potentially different things, potentially just integrating a solar facility into the grid at a utility scale, which would be like an interconnection study. But it sounds like you're also talking about what happens with solar at the end use level when there's a lot of solar popping up on rooftops and how that translates into impacts on the distribution system. But please,
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to talk more on the utility scale because we're dealing more with purchase power agreements here. So
Yes.
that's where I'm going with that.
I'm going to say I'm not directly familiar with what you have called a solar integration study. I am directly familiar with interconnection studies and interconnection agreements and issues that come up back and forth as between utilities and solar producers.
We'll get to the integration agreements in just a moment.
Okay.
That's fine. How about familiarity with ancillary service requirements and planning for and maintaining reliability on the utilities transmission and distribution systems? So that's kind of where we're getting into the second part there.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the ancillary services that are provided and are sometimes costed and paid for by bought and sold by utilities, particularly reserves. I am extremely familiar with reliability issues at all levels, from distribution to high-level planning, generation, and transmission.
Go ahead.
I have participated in a good number of the need determination proceedings before the Florida Public Service Commission. Among the issues that are the specific statutory issues that are to be addressed are the need for each project with respect to electrical system reliability and integrity. So we're looking at the system reliability criteria, reserve margins, loss of load probability, expected unserved energy, things like that. And then we're also looking at the results of transmission studies. I'm not a double E. I'm not a transmission engineer. I have worked closely with engineers a lot in my career, and we look at the transmission studies and find out where first and second contingency violation occur in terms of the reliability impacts of adding any particular facility, whether it's a gas combined cycle unit or solar or anything else, into the grid based on the then current data set that's being maintained by the Florida Reliability Coordinating Council, and putting the unit in and taking it out.
Tell me, and part of your answer leads me to this. I'll just kind of skip ahead. Do you do everything in-house with your firm, or do you bring in any independent contractors or modeling folks or engineers to help with any of the assessments, or is everything pretty much done in-house with you?
Well, I guess it depends on what the scope of the work involved is. If there's a transmission study involved, either my client or my firm, on behalf of our client, will hire a transmission engineer to prepare whatever studies are necessary. If there's a long-term system reliability study required, or a long-term production cost modeling study required for the case at hand, we will hire those kinds of experts. If it's a matter of calculating the utility's own avoided cost based on one or two avoided units, mapping out what we think the revenue requirements are, vetting that against what the utility says they are, and what credits and debits the utility is proposing to add in or take out of the cost, I generally do most of that myself.
To the extent that this project may require hiring outside experts or consultants to assist in some of the engineering or transmission issues, or do you do the modeling of avoided cost yourself, or is that?
No, ma'am, I would hire that done.
Would you be able to assure us of these outside folks that would be hired, of their independence from parties in these dockets here in South Carolina? There'd have to be a check done to reflect their independence as well. Not having conflicts with any of the utilities or the parties in these dockets.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. Yes, absolutely. I would vet them personally. I would give the results of my vetting either to your counsel or Ms. Boyd or you or anybody else here you want. We would make sure. I'm Martindale Hubbell, AV rated, and I don't mess around.
I'm asking these questions of everybody, Mr. Wright. so
No,
don't-
I understand. I just want to, I want to be sure that I'm real clear.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
I play fair.
Good. Any experience with modeling or studying the power system in South Carolina? And if not, would that lack of familiarity be a hindrance to your work under Act 62?
No, I have no such experience, and I don't believe it would be a significant hindrance to my work, as I understand the charge laid out in the Act, and as I also understand the specific tasks set forth in the draft contract that Ms. Boyd sent me.
Would it matter if the utility, if the system that you'd be modeling spans North and South Carolina, as in the instant, I think Duke Energy, they have generating plants in both North Carolina and South Carolina that serve load in both states. Would that present any problem?
No, ma'am.
Their system is what their system is, I reckon, so.
Yeah, yes, their system is what their system is, and I'm not sure if it's still VACAR as the reliability area or what, but the system is what the system is, and I'm familiar with integrated systems and off-system purchases and sales, and no, as far as I'm concerned, that would not impede my ability to analyze any of the issues here.
You mentioned that you'd had an opportunity to review Act 62, the South Carolina
Yes,
Freedom Energy Act. In the first section, 58-41-05, states, the Commission is directed to address all renewable energy issues in a fair and balanced manner, considering the cost and benefits to all customers of all programs and tariffs that relate to renewable energy and energy storage, both as part of the utility's power system and as direct investments by customers for their own energy needs and renewable goals. The Commission is also directed to ensure that the revenue recovery, cost allocation, and rate design of utilities that it regulates are just and reasonable and properly reflect changes in the industry as a whole, the benefits of customer renewable energy, energy efficiency and demand response, as well as any utility or state-specific impacts unique to South Carolina, which are brought about as consequences of this act. Later, in section 58-41-20 F2, the act states, as part of that, the Commission is expressly directed to consider the potential benefits of terms with a longer duration to promote the state's policy of encouraging renewable energy. That last section had to do with the terms of the purchase power agreements, but the phrase promote the state's policy of encouraging renewable energy is what I wanted to bring out. How would you work with these directives of the General Assembly? How would you work these directives into your analysis and recommendations made to the Commission under the purpose of this act?
As I understand it, the principal purpose of the work I would hopefully be engaged to do is to evaluate the utility's avoided costs. Reading on in the Act, I understand that that would also pertain to revenue requirements, cost allocation, and rate design. I strongly believe that all of these features should be what I call, the term I use is bilaterally fair. Customers should be treated the same way the utility treats itself. Independent power producers, solar producers, renewables, QFs, whomever they are, should be treated the same way the utility treats itself, and the utility should be treated fairly. In terms of the integrating the policy statement of promoting renewable energy, I would say I think the whole function here promotes renewable energy by, as I read the Act, putting it on a level playing field with utility options, and that's ultimately, you would hire me or whomever you hire to help you identify what that level playing field really is in avoided cost terms, and then you would have to make a decision, the ultimate decisions as to what to approve, whether in PPAs, renewable energy requirements, tariffs for the utilities. And by the way, I was the bureau chief of electric rates at the PSC, so I can help you with that stuff too. But so it's the overriding purpose, I think, to make things fair across the board. If I may just tell you very briefly what we got going on in Florida right now is the investor-owns are just loving building solar. Oh yes, they really love building solar. And they build it and finance it with ROEs in the 10.5, 11+% range and equity ratios in the 50% plus range. When potential solar providers go to them, they say, oh, our avoided unit is a gas-fired combined cycle unit in 2027, and these are these avoided costs for that, and you can't avoid that anyway because you're a solar facility. And solar developers, including my client, frankly, say, we can deliver 30 years of solar power to you for less than what you're going to pay for, because our ROE is less, our equity ratio is less, and we can give you a better deal. My position is real simple. If it's a better deal for customers, it's a better deal, and it's the deal that ought to be approved. And in so doing, if you do the analysis right and the decision follows the analysis, you will further renewable energy at the lowest possible cost to customers.
Thank you. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but have you drafted, well, I'm getting into the purchase power agreements. Have you drafted commitment to sell forms or had experience with those?
I have seen commitment to sell forms. Frankly, we do not use those in Florida. When presented with one, the fellow at the Duke, Florida company, Duke Energy Florida, said, we don't use these. We don't know what to do with this. I have seen commitment to sell forms submitted in Florida, adapted from a commitment to sell forms from one or the other state that's up here. I don't remember if it was a North Carolina blank commitment to sell form or a South Carolina blank commitment to sell form, but with the blanks filled in and submitted to Florida utility. But that's as far as I go. I understand what they are. We just don't use them. I have participated rather extensively in drafting letters in which a specific offer and commitment to sell power to an investor-owned utility is made, including pricing terms.
And how about purchase power agreements? You touched on that earlier. Have you you've had experience drafting purchase power agreements?
Yes, ma'am. I will say I have never drafted one from scratch. I have participated in a whole lot of power purchase agreements going back at least to 1992 when my client, what I tell you is all matters of public record. My client at the time was a development partnership of an out-of-state utility, Central and Southwest Corporation, a subsidiary of CSW, and Arc Energy, took a PPA that Florida Power and Light Company had executed with an entity called Cypress Energy Partners to build 2 coal-fired power plants in the Everglades. And my client made the arrangements to backstop their gas-fired proposal with 20-year gas contracts. And we took their contract and changed the pricing and changed the references from coal to gas and sent that in. I've participated in literally dozens of QF PPAs over time, negotiating, drafting, litigating. I've participated in drafting extensively utility-to-utility wholesale power purchase agreements on behalf of my municipal utility clients. It's right in this. It's in the scope of my expertise.
Under PURPA, I think the PURPA allows states discretion in implementing its requirements, but Act 62 provides some specific direction to us on avoided costs, yet it still leaves some discretion on these avoided cost issues. If you were selected as a consultant on these cases, cases, how would you envision your role on these avoided cost issues?
So, as I said, the avoided cost issue, in my mind, is what the utility would otherwise pay.
Would,
And so my role is to identify that and tell you all what that is. There are ancillary issues to that, like they will say, for example, they will publish a value for a gas-fired combined cycle unit at $875 a kilowatt of capacity. We can convert that to avoided cost. They will publish a value for utility scale solar, let's say, pick a number, $1,425 a kilowatt of capacity. We can convert that to avoided cost. One of the interesting issues comes, though, when you ask them, will you stand behind this number? Will you promise that if you build this unit, this is the only, the revenue requirements flowing from these input values is all that you will ask your customers to pay? And frequently the answer is not so much. So my role here is to, in trying to tie this back to PURPA, my role is to identify what the avoided costs really are on a fairly comparable basis, on a fair, bilaterally fair basis, help design terms and conditions or advise your staff in designing terms and conditions that are also bilaterally fair. I'm familiar with the PURPA requirements pretty deeply, and they require avoided cost. Like I said, we've got this situation going on in Florida where the utilities are saying, "Oh, you can't avoid our solar units," and we say, "Yes, we can." And then the avoided costs are X, and we'll do it for less. So.
I'm gonna switch and kind of go into the independence area a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke a little bit earlier about your representation of Ecoplexus and the Duke subsidiary, but you've never appeared before this commission in the South Carolina Public Service Commission previously, have you?
That is correct. I've never done any work in South Carolina. I'm not licensed in South Carolina, and I've never done any consulting work here.
Have you or anyone that you would employ or possibly employ, you or anyone in your firm, served as an advisor, consultant, or witness, or received compensation from? And I can go through the list of the parties in the docket, or have you run a conflicts check or run through the list of the parties to these dockets? But why don't we just go through Duke Energy or any of its subsidiaries?
We have run a specific conflicts check with respect to all three of the IOUs, and no, none of the utilities, none of their subsidiaries.
How about up the line? Any of their affiliates, like not Duke Energy Carolinas, but Duke Energy in Indiana, or any of those?
No.
Okay. So that answer applies to
Myself and my firm, and I would make sure it applied to anyone that I might engage to help with the work.
But it applies to all of, like, okay, not Dominion here in South Carolina, but also applies to Dominion in Virginia. And we just need to know the answer, whether there was any work, so we could gauge whether or not it was material.
No, ma'am, we have not done any work for any Dominion affiliate or any Duke affiliate.
Okay.
And I've already sent in a conflicts letter to Ms. Boyd.
Okay. And how about SCANA Corporation or the former SCE&G?
Same answer, no, ma'am.
So South Carolina Solar Business Alliance or any member of the Solar Business Alliance?
I do work for Ecoplexus, which is a member of the South Carolina Solar Business Alliance, in Florida only.
That work is limited to Florida?
Yes, ma'am. And I've not done any work for, as I read through the list of the members of the South Carolina Business Alliance, I've not done any work for anybody else. I will tell you, I have an ongoing relationship, although it's fairly low volume, with Tesla. I have advised Tesla on certain issues relating to the regulatory status of providing solar to end-use customers pursuant to leases in Florida. We have some peculiarities in our law as to what is and is not a regulated or regulatable public utility that requires such advice. Specifically, I helped them obtain a declaratory statement early this year from the Florida PSC that their solar lease product offering in Florida, as specifically modified for Florida, would not cause any of the providers or Tesla to be regulated as a public utility in Florida, and that petition was granted early
That
this
was
year.
just related to Tesla.
Just Tesla, just in Florida.
Johnson Development Associates Incorporated,
No, ma'am.
Walmart Incorporated.
I indicated in my in our conflicts letter, I have represented 2 affiliates of Walmart Incorporated, not Walmart itself, but I have represented 2 affiliates of Walmart Incorporated, Walmart Stores East LP and Sam's East Incorporated, in certain rate proceedings in Florida. There was a special rate offering that Gulf Power Company wanted to offer a few years ago, and I represented the Walmart entities in Florida in that to make sure it got through okay. I represented them in an energy conservation goals hearing 5 years ago, and I represented them in a Gulf Power general rate case in 2016-17. But I have not represented any Walmart entity in anything having anything to do with South Carolina or North Carolina or any jurisdiction other than Florida.
Nucor Corporation or Nucor Steel, South Carolina.
No.
South Carolina Coastal Conservation League.
No.
Southern Alliance for Clean Energy.
No.
South
I will tell you, I know these people fairly well, the SACE people, but I've not done any work for them at all.
South Carolina Energy Users Committee or any of the members of the South Carolina Energy Users.
No, ma'am.
Those are large industrials.
Yes.
Any work with any of the lawyers representing? Have you affiliated or worked with any of the lawyers?
I looked down the list and I did not recognize any of the attorneys' names.
I think you've described this, but a little bit, but just so we can
Just to be completely clear, the Walmart entities in the Carolinas may be represented by a firm, the Spillman firm,
yes.
2 attorneys named Derek Williamson and Stephanie Eaton.
Right.
They have appeared on behalf of Walmart in general rate cases in Florida, in which I have also appeared. In those cases, I've been representing the Florida Retail Federation, and Walmart has, for its own reasons, chosen to have their own counsel. So I do know who they are, but I've never done any work with them other than being at the same table with them in a rate case in Florida.
But you haven't worked.
I haven't.
Y'all haven't represented the same parties or worked to get jointly in representing anyone together.
No,
You just
no, we
appeared
no.
as counsel for different parties.
Correct.
Okay. Have you or anyone with your firm or and you've gone over this, but I just want to do it as quickly as we can. Served as an advisor, consultant, or witness, or as their counsel, any investor-owned utilities, electric utilities,
Not
regulated
Yes,
investor.
ma'am. Yeah.
Let me clarify.
About 30 years ago, I did a minor amount of rate consulting work for the United Illuminating Company that serves in New Haven, Connecticut. That's it.
Municipal utilities or cooperatives.
Yes, ma'am. I represent the Orlando Utilities Commission. I have represented the Utilities Commission of New Smyrna Beach, Florida, the City of Lake Worth, Florida, and Vero Beach, Florida, which until recently had its own municipal utility. So yes, I have and continue to represent municipal utilities.
Nonprofit entities.
If you mean like charitable organizations,
Well, even some of these, I mean, I think SACE is probably a nonprofit type, any kind of.
The answer is, I've not represented SACE or Sierra Club or anybody like that. I've not represented NGOs generally.
Any industry or trade association representing electrical utilities?
No, ma'am.
Not only represent, but if you are any kind of, have membership or associate membership with any of these kind of groups, I think we're looking for that too.
No, no, I'm not a member of the Florida Municipal Electric Association, but I have been a speaker at their annual conference a couple times.
Any industry or trade association representing the solar industry?
No,
Any state agency, industry, or trade association representing the using and consuming public, like in South Carolina, the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs and ORS have, Office of Regulatory Staff have some interest in representing the public here, but any kind of group like that in Florida or elsewhere?
yes, I have served as a witness for our public council in Florida on a couple of occasions. It's been quite a while. It's been a long time since I've done economic consulting work like that, but I have testified on behalf of the Florida Office of Public Counsel. I testified as on behalf of the Florida Public Service Commission staff before the PSC when I was on the staff. I also testified on behalf of the Michigan Attorney General in 2 or 3 proceedings, rate case type proceedings. I think one involved one involved Detroit Edison, the other involved Consumers Power. I think this also was this is while I was in law school, so it was 27 to 30 years ago. During that same time period, I testified before the Indiana PUC on behalf of the Consumer Advocate of Indiana. But again, that was in the window of 30 years ago.
Any industry or trade association representing environmental advocacy groups?
No,
Any regulatory utility commissions other than when you were on staff?
no.
Do you have processes in place to ensure the independence of your work and your firm on matters such as this? Can you just assure us?
We certainly have a formal conflicts check process. In addition, I'll say it this way: we hold ourselves out as highly ethical attorneys. Like as I said earlier, I'm Martindale Hubble AV rated, and I take that very seriously. My law partner, Jay Levia's wife, Jennifer, teaches ethics at the Florida State University College of Law, and if we have any doubt, we call Jen. So not any real formal process other than our formal conflicts checks processes, but we take it very seriously.
Do you have any reason, however slight or small, to believe that you could not serve as a fair, impartial, and independent consultant to this commission in these 3 dockets?
No, ma'am. No reason whatsoever. I can do this independently and objectively.
If you were selected as a consultant on these dockets, are you willing to refrain from any unauthorized ex parte contact with the parties or with others?
Of course. I don't know what your ex parte law says, but I know what ours says, and I know what ex parte communications are, and of course I am.
Any reason, again, however small or slight, that would give this commission pause or concern about hiring you as an independent consultant in these dockets?
No reason with any objective foundation. I think you would look at what I've told you, and that is that I have represented affiliates of Walmart, and that I have and do represent customers, and that I have and do have and continue to represent Ecoplexus in its business dealings in Florida. That might give you pause. It does not give me any.
Are you aware of any reason that would make it difficult for you or your firm to represent or to advise this commission in an impartial manner and to provide an impartial report as required by Act 62?
No, ma'am. No reason whatsoever. We can do this.
Have you, in any of your former representation in Florida or elsewhere, but as I understand it, it's primarily Florida, have you formed opinions in cases that would make it difficult to have a different opinion should the facts so warrant it here in South Carolina? Would those prior opinions prevent you from having a different opinion on a similar issue here in South Carolina? I'm just trying to get to the impartiality part. Are you so rooted in any case that you've worked on and any result that you've taken that you couldn't come to a different conclusion if the facts so warranted here?
That was a complex question. Let me say it this way. I have 100% confidence that I can be 100% impartial and offer you my best judgment based on whatever it is the facts show. If the facts show that the avoided costs are X, the avoided costs are X. If the facts show that this would be a down the road thing, because at this point we're talking about fair terms and conditions, objective, bilaterally fair PPAs, objectively calculated avoided cost. But down the road, if the utility makes the best offer, the utility ought to get the deal if they're willing to stand behind it. But no, there's no, I will be completely impartial. I will follow the facts. If you're not committed to the truth, you will make yourself crazy.
Mr. Wright, thank you very much. I appreciate your patience with me. That's all I have.
No patience required. Thank you for your questions, Commissioner.
Mr. Wright, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Urban.
Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I know that you are aware, or if you've read the act, that we have to make some fairly important decisions quickly because we have some time limitations in the act to try and comply with, and we're doing our very best. But my question is, could you get up to speed quickly? Do you have the available time and resources necessary to staff up if needed and be ready to roll with these 3 dockets as soon as the filings or pre-filings are coming in now, so you'd have to be available to begin reading and processing those if you were hired, and then responding accordingly. So it would be a heavy workload during the months of September, October, November, and December, which would be when the final order would be filed. Would you be able to take that on as a project?
Yes, sir.
See any problems with meeting those strict time limitations?
No, sir. We'd make it work.
And if we needed you here on site to work with staff, could you make yourself available as needed?
Yes, sir.
The act also places upon us the importance. I think in a number of places that we see the word independent, and so I think you've done an excellent job of telling us why you can be independent. Can you also be impartial, meaning that you don't come in with any preconceived notions about how this should come out?
Absolutely. As I said, the avoided costs are what they are. And my charge is to tell you what they are and to give you my best judgment looking at the PPAs and the terms and conditions contained therein to ensure that they're fair and consistent with getting y'all where you want to be, which is fair, just, reasonable rates, fair, just, reasonable contracts, and promoting renewable energy as indicated.
And so, as I understand, your approach is to follow the facts, and you'll go where those facts take you.
Yes, sir.
You've had, it sounds to me like you've had a lot of experience in data requests. Is that something you've had to do in the course of your practice?
Oh, yes, sir. Lots. Yeah.
So
Probably thousands. Certainly hundreds, probably thousands.
that would be,
Both ends.
you feel very
sending and
comfortable,
receiving.
we feel very comfortable in that arena
Yes, sir.
in terms of trying to get the relevant information.
Yes, sir.
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to have you with us this morning, Mr. Wright.
Thank you.
I think certainly Commissioner Belser has gone over quite an extensive list of questions and asked most of what I had, and now Commissioner Irvin's followed up with one. Just want to ask you one or two little follow-ups, maybe to where Commissioner Belser was going. You were talking with her about possibly having to maybe bring on some other folks, and you talked about how if you did, that you would certify or verify or vet, if you will, and give that information to Ms. Boyd to any of our attorneys here or anybody on the commission that wanted to see that who you might bring into this is also independent. What I wanted to ask you gets into cost a little bit. I don't know if you have your arms around that, and you may be well aware that Act 62, not only mandates that we do this, but it also waives the state procurement code so that we have the resources we need to employ you and or your associates. Do you have any idea what you might be talking in terms of cost if you had to go outside like that, outside of your own firm, or didn't have the experts there? I'm talking about the folks that you might employ.
I have to say, I think the answer is no, I don't know, because I don't know what would be required. If it's a full-blown transmission study, I know folks to hire to do that, and I would personally vouch for their independence. I know premier production cost modelers. I would say, based on what I understand the charge to be, I'm optimistic at this stage that we probably would not have to go outside for production cost modelers, but depending on how the answers to the data requests come back, if they come back with extensive 30-year cumulative present value revenue requirements analyses, or CPVRRs, that are more detailed, more arcane than they might be, then we might have to hire somebody. And
So what you're saying is you can probably do a lot of the production costs in-house, but if the data request came back that you needed a transmission study or certain type of generation asset cost study, then that would be where you would have to employ, I think you even mentioned engineers that you knew.
Yeah, transmission studies you're going to have done by engineers. Production cost modeling you're going to have done by either engineers or engineer economists, but people who specialize in that, specialize in running PowerSim and ProMod and programs like that. I don't.
That was you just hit my only question remaining. In the past, we've had proceedings here at the commission, and our utilities have presented information from ProSim and ProMod or some of these expensive systems that run that type information. And of course, they've had key witnesses, oftentimes with PhDs, they put up here on the stand and go over that information. But in the past, some of the parties to those proceedings have complained that they don't have the resources to afford a ProSim. That was my question to you. Is that obviously would be something you're saying I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that you're saying obviously ProSim, to have that type information, you would have to consult out or bring in someone.
Yes.
Or bring in,
Yeah,
or purchase or have it run and purchase the data, the information.
Yes, I'm not a somebody who can run ProMod or ProSim or PowerSim or those models. We would have to hire that done.
Well, that was my
Sorry.
last question to you. No, you've answered, I think,
Okay.
everything Commissioner Belser had, and those were the two that I had to follow up. And Commissioner Irvin, of course, had a question. So thank you, sir, for answering my questions, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Howard.
That's right. Good morning.
Good morning.
In your mind, how many different, well, that's not a good way to put it, but in your opinion, how many different methods of determining voided cost are there?
I'm going to say I think the right way to do it is to look at the utilities revenue requirements over whatever the utilities normal planning horizon is. In Florida, our normal planning horizon is 30 years. That's the one I'm used to. That's the planning horizon expected life of most new generating units. You could go 40 years depending on what the avoided generating units are. But I think the right way to do avoided cost analysis is to look at the utilities revenue requirements with an asset and without an asset. And whether it's a transmission line or a generation asset, a combined cycle plant or solar, utility scale solar facility or whatever. And identify those revenue requirements and what they would charge their customers. Ask them whether they'll stand behind it. If they won't, then my job would be somewhat more difficult, because then I have to say to you, well, the utility estimates this, I estimate this. The utility will not stand behind theirs, which means that they're asking the customers to wear certain risks. From my extensive experience, they usually are not willing to share the variability in future costs with independent power producers, solar producers, or whatever. But I think there's one correct method, and that is to determine the cost to customers.
There was quite a lot of conversations in one of our hearings considering different methodologies used in calculating avoided cost. And my memory serves me correct, there were 3 different ones.
Okay.
But one of them included, I think, big controversy. One of them was including poles and meters and all that. Are you familiar with the controversy that I'm talking about in a fuel hearing case we had a couple of years ago, a year ago?
I am familiar with the issue, generally speaking, and to some extent specifically, about whether distribution poles and meters and such should be included in evaluating the value of avoided cost, and particularly in terms of evaluating the value of energy conservation programs. Again, on that front, I say look at what the utility does. If the utility really would use lighter gauge facilities, lower capacity transformers, and actually have different costs in order to serve customers, if there were a different configuration of end use facilities on the back end, then that should be taken into account. But I'm definitely familiar with those issues.
Okay, I guess the bottom line of my question is that any of the different methodologies used could benefit one party more than another party, or one group of interveners more than another group of interveners. Do you agree with that, or you staying with your,
Well,
whatever the utility decide to do is the way you want to do it? Calculation utilities use to figure their voided cost.
I guess I would also have to look at whether I thought what they were saying was reasonable.
Okay.
I.e., if they say, well, we would build this, and the answer might be, no, you wouldn't build that, because that's not the rational decision. But that's really an IRP question. Give you an example. The poles and meters business, the issue came up in a hearing I was involved in last week. And the environmental entities want the utilities to recognize lower costs for transmission, distribution, and service laterals and transformation facilities. If there's going to be energy conservation at the end use level, at the homeowner level, and at the business level. The catch is this: would the utility, using legitimate, normal, reasonable, prudent engineering practices, would the utility build its distribution system any differently? If the answer is legitimately no, then there's no basis to incorporate savings for that. So if you said, well, we're not going to incorporate that, that will certainly disfavor the environmentalists' position, because it will not give as much avoided cost value to energy conservation. But if it's the right answer, it's the right answer.
Some conversation, and you touched on it briefly, about selling forms. Tell me about selling forms.
Well, I can't tell you a whole lot about the.
What do you know about it? I know you said you weren't familiar with it and you didn't do it, but from what you know about it from the industry, is the selling forms, is there advantage to the utilities for furnishing them? Or what is the advantage or disadvantage of selling form, or why is the selling forms an issue?
I just have to qualify my answer. I'm going to answer your question, but I have to qualify my
That's
answer
fine.
by telling you again that I'm not
You told me that, I understand.
not familiar with that. I believe that the real advantage of the commitment to sell forms, as I understand them, is that that by tendering a commitment to sell X amount of power at the utility's avoided cost, or something like that, over such and such a period of time, it creates a right in vesting in the QF to sell and deliver that power at the utility's avoided cost. So it's really of advantage to them. It, certainly and it also implicates other issues relating to priorities and subscription limits. You know, if the utility's got 500 megawatts of avoided capacity, and they get 1,000 megawatts of commitment to sell forms, it does raise some interesting issues, and I've been directly involved in those in Florida, not under the name commitment to sell forms, but where the utilities actually received tendered standard offer contracts for more power than their avoided unit would produce.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you hit on well one. You
Okay.
Yeah, I realize you said you weren't that familiar with it,
Right.
but apparently you are pretty familiar with it.
The concept.
Conversationally familiar.
The concept, and like I said, in Florida, we don't use them, but we have standard offer contracts, and functionally, if you got 12 QFs who show up the day that the standard offer contract is issued and sign them and turn them in, that's a lot like a commitment to sell form, I think.
Commissioner Belcher touched on it, but basically all of your work is in the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
So vertically, not vertically, but everybody you work with is basically vertically integrated. You always work within a vertically integrated environment, is that right?
For all practical purposes, yes, sir. I've been involved with municipal utilities who were distribution only, but for all practical purposes, yes, sir. 99.5% of my work is in vertically integrated utilities.
Of your work, what percentage, and this is rough, what percentage of your work was done for utilities versus consumers versus interveners?
By interveners, I understand you to mean the solar development interest and the environmentalists.
Yeah.
Okay. Say over the last, let's say going back to 2005 when I came to represent the Florida Retail Federation. So let's say over the last 14 years, probably half or thereabouts has been for consumers, Florida Retail Federation, and other consumers with other problems. You know, they got a problem with their gas contract or a problem with their special electric rate contract. But probably half for consumers. Probably roughly 25% or a little more for utilities, municipal utilities. Well, let's say that. Sorry.
You just grew up in
Let me back up, because Probably 20% for municipal utilities, probably 40% for end-use customers, probably another 10 to 15% for municipalities who have special relationships. They are customers, and sometimes I represent them as customers. Most of my work for municipalities has to do with helping them negotiate franchise agreements and helping them with getting their power lines undergrounded at a fair cost. And then another 15 to 20% has been for independent power producers, QFs, solar producers, biomass producers. That's pretty good. Say 40, 20, 20, 20. It's probably pretty good.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
That concludes
Commissioner.
my questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other? Commissioner Williams, are you out there if you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have any substantive questions. Excuse me. I think everyone has covered Mr. Wright's background very thoroughly. I am just curious, Mr. Wright, if I understand correctly, your law firm is comprised of 2 members, or do you have associates?
We have 7 partners and 1 associate, Commissioner. It's a long name.
If you were assigned,
The formal name is a long name. We just shorten it to Gardner Bist. It's Gardner Bist, Bodenbush, D. Lavia, and Wright, PA, and we have 1 associate.
and if you were awarded this contract, how many of your partners would work with you on this contract?
At most 1, and that would be John T. Lavia III, or J. Lavia. We have. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have discussed this internally, and we are wondering internally about the best way and the most appropriate way to structure the engagement if you are kind enough to select me to be your principal guy. We're thinking it may not be a law firm engagement. I do have a separate PA that we could run it through as a consulting engagement. We're not sure, frankly, at this moment about consulting fees for this kind of work being, and particularly in a state in which we're not licensed to practice, being run through the law firm. We would figure it out, but to answer your direct question, at most 1 partner. Jay Lavia helps me a lot with my utility practice, and he would be the one who would help me.
Okay. And you think that you and Mr. Lavia will have enough capacity to provide the type of support we need during this time?
Certainly, as far as all the legal aspects go, drafting the data requests, evaluating the data requests, participating in reviewing PPAs, assisting the staff in reviewing avoided cost, advising the staff in connection with preparing for hearings, and I notice there's also provision in there for assisting the staff in briefings for commissioners in advance of hearings. And everything is in the contract we can handle. If there's additional technical work required outside, then that would be something extra.
So you don't foresee any situation where you would need to request an extension or anything that would delay your provision of services?
I'll give you the lawyer answer, not other than a force majeure.
Okay.
Yeah, I view.
All right.
You know, I understand what you were telling me is that these are like what in the law business we call jurisdictional deadlines. We don't miss jurisdictional deadlines.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you for your appearance today. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Commissioner Belzer.
Mr. Wright, if I could follow up on your response to Commissioner Williams' question, there is also this report that has to be written under Act 72.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the advising, but getting the report done.
I was going from memory, and I just missed that one
Understand.
in my mental list of tasks under the contract. But yes, I'm aware of the report.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, anything else we need to ask Mr. Wright? I know one thing, I can't imagine many more. Mr. Wright, do you own any stock in Duke or any of our regulated utilities, Duke or Dominion?
No, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Wright, I appreciate your being here, your answers, the detail that you gave us, and if no one else has a question, then we are finished and adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
What time? 11:30. So we'll be back at 11:30.
Back at 11. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Dr. Latondre. And I assume Commissioner Williams, you're there?
I'm here.
All right, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Great. Okay, Ms. Wheat, I think we'll do the swearing in and then we will begin from there.
Excellent.
If you would raise your right hand, please. Solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick comment. I don't have a visual. I'm seeing the Special Commission business meeting in session.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Can you see me? Can you see me? Or?
We can see you
Okay.
just fine. So, let's double check and see if are we going to be able to get, is he going to be able to see?
He should be seeing the Skype wide shot of the hearing room right at the moment
But you're not getting the.
on your
wide-
Skype call.
On your Skype?
I'm not, no.
You're not watching the stream.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Now I do have it.
There you go.
My apologies. No, it's showing,
You shouldn't be watching the live stream. You should be seeing your Skype call with a wide shot of the hearing room.
yeah, I see it when it's minimized, but not when it's large scale. But
All right, but we can see you. Oh, there you go. We see you. And you should be seeing the hearing room in the small picture. No, I'm sorry. It should be the other way around.
yeah, no, it's unusual that I'm seeing it in the small, but not in the large expanded. So we'll just go with the small.
There may be a setting to swap that.
Okay. I just see the hearing room. I'm not seeing any individuals.
You'll see the
the
individuals
small-
once they're talking.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get going, and then hopefully that will, you'll be seeing when each individual speaks with you. Well, Dr. Latondre,
Okay.
we appreciate you being here with us today, and thank you. Just like to ask you to make an opening statement and tell us anything about yourself that you want to tell us before we start asking questions.
Excellent. Well, first off, I would just like to say thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you about the important work that you have ahead of you. I certainly understand that these are challenging times in this industry, exciting and challenging, with evolution of technology, shifting economics, and obviously also lots of policy imperatives are coming down which impact the work that you do. So I would imagine your job is getting more difficult as time moves forward. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate this opportunity. So I'll give you a quick overview of my own personal background, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about the organization that I represent, Synapse Energy Economics. So I have a master's degree in economics from State University of New York in Binghamton. And after completing my degree in economics, I was employed by the Research Triangle Institute in North Carolina, and I served as an energy economist, and this was in the early to mid-1990s. And in that role as a utility economist, I was involved in some of the early work evaluating utility investments in energy efficiency. And through that work, I did do analysis of utility avoided costs, and we applied those results to evaluating the cost effectiveness of utility investments in energy efficiency. And my work was particularly focused on industrial and commercial applications for high efficiency motors and drives technologies. So after a year and a half down in the Research Triangle Park area in North Carolina, I decided that I would pursue my PhD. And through my experience as an energy economist, I learned a lot about the industry and wanted to continue to gain additional knowledge and skills in energy and economics. So I proceeded to the University of Delaware, where I was for 4 years pursuing a PhD in urban affairs and public policy. And I was specializing in energy economics and policy. As a graduate student, I was funded through the U.S. Department of Energy to support my research and my tuition. And as a research assistant at the University of Delaware, I was working at the Center for Energy and Environmental Policy, and I was conducting research on the economics of distributed energy systems, including solar and other energy systems, energy storage, et cetera. And this was in the mid to late 1990s, so we were doing some very early pioneering research on understanding the value of distributed energy resources and their benefits to the electric grid. After completing my dissertation in 1997, I have since had a dual career in academia and as an independent consultant. I have taught for many years at Green Mountain College, a small liberal arts college in Vermont, teaching environmental economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics, and I also taught a variety of business courses and courses on energy as well. Over the past 5 years, I was recruited by the Vermont Law School to develop courses and contribute to their programs in Masters in Energy Law and Regulation, MERL program, and also their program in Masters in Environmental Policy and Law, the MELT program. And for Vermont Law School, I developed classes on energy regulation and taught those for a number of years. So these were delivered online to students who were participating across the country and across the globe. And I also developed and taught a class on environmental economics for Vermont Law School. During my career as an academic, I also had an active consulting practice. I have done consulting work for a variety of organizations, including U.S. Department of Energy Laboratories, the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I've conducted research for nonprofit groups, including the it's now called the Smart Electric Alliance, the SEPA, the Smart Electric Policy Alliance, I believe that's the acronym. I've also conducted research for some electric utilities, including Green Mountain Power and Central Vermont Public Service in Vermont. And I've also collaborated with academic institutes, including the University of Vermont's Transportation Research Center. So I've done a variety of work, all focused on the economics and the policy analysis of distributed energy systems around electric vehicles, around energy storage, and solar electric technologies. And most recently, I have come to join Synapse Energy Economics, which is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I recently started with Synapse in June of this spring. And it's a real pleasure to be a part of Synapse. Synapse is a leading consulting firm in energy economics and policy analysis. Synapse was founded in 1996 by Bruce Bewald, who is the current CEO of Synapse Energy Economics. Synapse has a staff of over 30 people, including consultants with senior level experience in economics, regulation, and deregulation of the electric utility and natural gas sectors. And many of our consultants have held positions as regulators, economists, and utility commissioners, and ISO, independent system operator staff. And we provide services in a variety of areas, including economic and technical analyses, regulatory support, research and report writing, expert witness services, policy analysis and development, economic, multi-sector, and power system modeling. We have a very strong electric utility modeling group that has worked for a variety of organizations. We do facilitation and training. We also develop in-house analytical tools that are used by our clients in a variety of different applications. So with that, I just want to give you a quick introduction to my personal career trajectory and also to share with you the work that we do here at Synapse.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to Commissioner questions. Commissioner Belzer.
Good morning, Dr. Latondre. How are you this morning?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm Commissioner Florence Belzer, and I've been asking the same questions of all of the interviewees, so if you'll bear with me, this will take a little bit of time. I do have a couple of instructions, if I could. When I reference you, I'm not talking about singular you. I'm talking about your team, your company, people that you may bring in to work on this project if you are awarded it. So I'm looking at that in a broader scope, if you would. And
Excellent.
if I reference, if I ask you about experience with electrical utilities, while I am very concerned and interested in the investor-owned electrical utilities here in South Carolina being Duke Energy Carolinas, Duke Energy Progress, and Dominion, formerly known as SCE&G. If I'm asking for conflicts or information about work that may have been done for any of these utilities, it's a broader Duke. It'd be all of the Duke subsidiaries, all of the Dominion groups, regardless of state, just so that we can be clear on any conflicts, if you would.
Thank you. That's clear.
Doctor, and I've read your bio and I've looked at the website, and could you explain some of your level of involvement and analysis on avoided cost?
Sure. So as I indicated in my opening statement, when I was employed as an energy economist at the Research Triangle Institute in North Carolina, we were involved supporting utilities who were required by their regulators to do third-party independent assessments of their energy efficiency programs. And so as an analyst at Research Triangle Institute, RTI, I was involved in looking and reviewing utility avoided cost calculations and also applying those calculations to assessing the benefits of investments in energy efficiency. As I'm sure you're well aware of, the benefits of reducing the demand through energy through efficiency are understood as those costs that the utility avoids, and therefore we ascribe those to the benefits category. In my consulting practice, quite frankly, I have not done work in this avoided cost space. I have taught these concepts in the courses that I've developed for students at Vermont Law School, and I definitely understand the theory, the origins of the PURPA, and the requirements for establishing avoided costs for payments to qualified facilities. And one of the aspects of my decision to join Synapse was I knew I was joining a group of consultants that had really broad and deep experience in all facets of utility regulation, including in evaluating utility avoided cost analysis, and also conducting their own detailed economic modeling of utility systems and using those analyses to support a variety of different clients and their interests in a variety of different contexts and proceedings. So
Yeah.
I would bring leadership to the effort here from Synapse, and I have some experience doing avoided cost analyses, deep understanding of the knowledge and the context, and I would have at my disposal a team of analysts and experts who have done this type of analysis in multiple jurisdictions multiple times.
Would you explain your team or your entity's experience with solar integration cost studies and quantification of integration cost studies?
Yes, we have a number of individuals here that have, I'm sorry, I'm just going to refer to some of my notes.
That's fine. I'm referring to notes as well.
Yes. So as a graduate student at University of Delaware, my dissertation was focused on solar technologies in particular and understanding the value that solar brings to the electric grid. And as a consultant, I've done a variety of projects focused on solar energy integration. So I have a pretty extensive experience understanding the issues, the challenges with integrating solar into our electric systems. And in addition to that, we have experts here at Synapse who have done numerous projects on solar integration. For example, a colleague of mine who, Tommy Vitolo, he has worked for a variety of organizations, including the Vermont organization when they were evaluating their net metering 2.0 policy that was proposed. He has developed testimony in a variety of different contexts, supporting analyses of solar integration costs, evaluating those costs. And so, for example, excuse me, this is in Vermont, docket number 8586. Tommy provided direct testimony on the needs and economic benefits of the proposed Coolidge Solar 20 megawatt solar electric generation facility. That's just one of among many different projects that he's been involved with, looking at solar integration and supporting our clients in terms of their interests in understanding the issues at hand.
How about your experience or your team's experience with ancillary services requirements and planning for and maintaining the reliability of an electrical utilities transmission and distribution system?
Yes, I have personally done work looking at ancillary services markets, and these markets are generally run by the independent system operators or the regional transmission organizations. And ancillary service markets are divided into different products, frequency response regulation, spinning reserves, non-spinning reserves. And all of these products are designed to make sure that the grid has sufficient capacity to meet demand, in particular if there is a forced outage. If a large power plant trips offline, these resources are ready and available to deliver power to the system so that there is no interruption in service to utility customers. So I have looked at the structure of the markets for these services. I've looked at historical data for these services, and I definitely have a deep understanding of the role that ancillary services play in terms of maintaining system reliability.
How about experience with assessing regulating reserve requirements on operating usage requirements or the utilities system, the reserve?
Yeah, well, So as I mentioned earlier, our team here at Synapse has deep modeling experience and expertise in the models that we use to simulate regional grid systems, incorporate the provisioning of ancillary services in those models. And so the requirements for ancillary services generally are established by reliability councils, the National Electric Reliability Council, and then there's regional reliability councils that specify generally the amount and the quality of the reserves that must be available to grid operators, again, to meet certain reliability and safety standards on the system. So I definitely understand the reliability regimes that are in place across different regions of the United States, and our models that we use here at Synapse integrate into those models the requirements that are established by those regional authorities, and the model will simulate market outcomes based on meeting both demand and energy in the region, but also assuring that the resources are sufficient on the system to meet those ancillary services, those reserve services that are necessary for reliable operation.
Doctor, I am now aware that that at least some of your colleagues, and I believe you may have testified in South Carolina previously, and I'll get into a little more of that when I hit the section or my questions on independence. But would you explain if you or your colleagues have experience with modeling or studying the power system in South Carolina specifically?
Yes. So just to clarify, I have not testified in South Carolina. We have, however, my colleagues have testified and presented direct and rebuttal testimony in South Carolina. In particular, Ms. Glick, Debbie Glick, is a colleague of mine here at Synapse, and she testimony in South Carolina that addressed Act 236 compliance, and it was submitted on behalf of the SACE and CCL. SACE, of course, standing for the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and CCL, the Coastal Conservation Alliance, in dockets number 2018-1-E, docket number 2018-2-E, docket number 2018-3.E, and I believe my colleague Tommy as well has submitted testimony in South Carolina and North Carolina as well.
Okay. So,
but again, I have not.
All right. But they have experience with modeling and studying the South Carolina power system, the power system in South Carolina.
Yes, that's correct. Ms. Glick is one of our modeling experts, and she has done some modeling of that, the electric grid in that region of the country.
Would the fact that they had worked in cases here in South Carolina on behalf of parties, would that influence their work if the commission was the client and needing an independent analysis? Would that be any undue influence or impact their decision?
No, I would say that's one of the hallmarks of Synapse. As an academic, I take independence to be extremely important. And one of my choices to join, part of my choice to join Synapse was the fact that it is an organization that represents a variety of different interests, and they come to each project with a clear clarity in terms of the independence from the other work that they've done. So they come to a new project with clarity in terms of serving that client's interest and not being unduly influenced by projects that they may have done in the past. Synapse has worked for public utility commissions in both the United States and Canada, Office of Consumer Advocates, Attorneys General, environmental organizations, foundations, and government associations. And what has allowed this company to succeed and to persist is the fact that they do their work independently of the work that they do for other clients, and again, representing their interests as forcefully as they can. Now, I do recognize that independence and lack of influence is a critical part of your decision here in selecting an appropriate consultant to support you in the work that you have. And I'm very confident that Synapse would provide the level of independence that would meet your highest standards.
Thank you for that response. Do you have a copy of Act 62 with you?
I do, yes.
I want to refer to, it's actually Section 1 of the Act. It is the very first code section that is being added by Act 62, and it's under Section 1, and it's Section 1 of the Act, and the code section that is being added is Section 58-41-05. And that section, if you'll read along with me, the Commission is directed to address all renewable energy issues in a fair and balanced manner, considering the cost and benefits to all customers of all programs and tariffs that relate to renewable energy and energy storage, both as part of the utility's power system and as direct investments by customers for their own energy needs and renewable goals. The Commission also is directed to ensure that the revenue recovery, cost allocation, and rate design of utilities that it regulates are just and reasonable and properly reflect changes in the industry as a whole, the benefits of customer renewable energy, energy efficiency, and demand response, as well as any utility or state-specific impacts unique to South Carolina, which are brought about by the consequences of this act. There's another section dealing with the length of the power purchase agreements, and it's found in the amendment to under Section 58-41-20 F2, and it's a lot shorter, and there's a phrase that I want to add in that, and the sentence reads, the Commission is expressly directed to consider the potential benefits of terms with a longer duration to, and this is the phrase I was keying on, promote the state's policy of encouraging renewable energy. I have my interpretation of the long code section, and then this other phrase, and how the legislature is directing us. But my question to you is, how would you and your company work with these directives from the South Carolina legislature? How would you work these directives into your analysis and recommendations which you would make to this commission?
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you. That's you keyed in on a very important component here, and as I'm sure you're aware, it's quite complex. So we're dealing obviously with a very complex system. I think someone once famously said that the electric grid is the most complex technology that humans have ever created, and it involves many components, different technologies. And so my interpretation here is that part of our expertise as a consulting firm is that we have the skill and the tools to analyze the costs and the benefits of technologies as they're integrated into the electrical system. So as you know, this requires complex modeling. It requires valid assumptions, input data, And so my interpretation of this first component that you referenced is really clearly understanding how renewable energy generators, the costs that they impose on the system and the benefits that they create as well. So as energy economists, we would have the tools and the skill to accurately measure and assess the system impacts of integrating these new resources onto the system. And not only do you have to understand the costs and benefits, but then there's the second step of in terms of allocating those costs and benefits equitably across the system to generate sufficient, through the rate structures. And the rate structures have to generate sufficient revenue for the utility to allow them to recover their costs. So my interpretation of this really is a clear analytical approach to the accounting of the costs and benefits to the system from integrating these new resources, and then tracking those costs and benefits across the system and developing rates that accurately allocate those costs and benefits to consumers in a way that's equitable and efficient, and at the same time recognizes the need for utilities to generate sufficient revenue to provide the vital services that they provide.
Thank you.
The second component, where the state mentions this policy to promote renewable energy. So obviously, this Act 62 is a major step in that direction, and so there is some broader societal objective that the state legislature is understanding from increasing the use of renewable energy systems on the grid, and we want to support that through facilitating analysis and research that would allow the integration of these resources onto the grid in a way that maximizes the benefits to consumers in the region.
Thank you, Doctor. In dealing with avoided costs, of course, we're going to be looking at PURPA, and PURPA has allowed a good bit of discretion to the states for implementation of the PURPA requirements, but Act 62 has provided direction to this commission on avoided costs, yet it also leaves some discretion on these avoided cost issues. If you and your company are selected as a consultant on these cases, how would you envision your role in advising this commission and in preparing the report required by Act 62?
Yeah, great. So I guess stepping back for a moment, and we understand, as an economist, I understand that markets allocate resources efficiently. And the best outcomes are when markets can function uninhibited by outside factors which make the market outcome perhaps not the best outcome for society. So markets are understood by economists to be an efficient mechanism for allocating resources. And we know that the electric utility industry is what economists call a natural monopoly, where given certain structural issues in terms of the industry, markets are not available to determine the best allocation of resources towards meeting the energy needs of consumers across the region. So regulation, the job that you all have assumed in your role, is to try to navigate through the regulatory process to achieve an outcome which is as close as possible to the outcome that the markets would deliver if it were subject to those market forces. So the avoided cost concept is really this idea that we don't have market data signals to tell us what the value would be of compensating qualifying resources or energy efficiency, qualifying facilities or energy efficiency. So we need to engage in this process of estimating what the marginal cost is to the system of delivering additional energy and capacity. So with that broad understanding that we want to use our tools in our analysis to try to move us towards an allocation of situation which mimics the markets, although we recognize that that won't be perfect. So in terms of avoided costs, supporting your work to evaluate avoided cost proposals by the utilities within your region, we would engage in what would be kind of a three-step process. The first would be to assess the utility's overall methodology, kind of a higher-level analysis. What is the approach that the utility took to determining these avoided costs? And the approach that they took, is that consistent with what we've seen with other utilities across the country? Is it consistent with trying to determine a value which would be closest to the market value that one could achieve through this type of analysis? So that would be kind of the first layer of analysis, looking at the overall methodology that were employed by the utilities, judging that against the work that we've done in other regions and best practices. And then the second layer would be looking at the specific inputs that the utility used into the models that they relied upon to generate their avoided cost values. So this would be looking at the load forecasts. Did the load forecast that they used in their analysis, does that seem reasonable? Is it supported by historic trends? Is it supported by economic growth projections of the region? We would look closely at the fuel forecast that they use in their models. So we would do a lot of evaluating of the inputs that they used to generate the results for their avoided cost estimates. And then the third layer would be looking at their modeling parameters and how they configured the software that they use to generate these results. We have experts here who have used these types of models, and they are capable of evaluating how the utilities actually implemented the model and make recommendations and make suggestions and judgments about how the use of those models might be improved. So if we do have questions in any of those areas, we would request through the commission, that the utilities do additional runs and using their models, and we would build the inputs and develop the parameter files and provide those to the utilities and ask them to do additional runs so that we could do what we call sensitivity analysis to evaluate the impact on avoided cost estimates, giving different scenarios in terms of economic growth, in terms of load forecasts, in terms of fuel price forecasts, and then we would provide to you in a draft form a report which would outline our analysis at those various layers, in addition to compare the results from the runs that we requested from the utility with the results that the utility provided in their filing.
Thank you, Doctor. In addition to avoided cost, these dockets also have have as issues form contracts of purchase power agreements and commitments to sell forms and terms and conditions necessary for these small power producers. Have you or your team had experience with drafting purchase power agreements, or can you tell us what experience, if you've had experience with purchase power agreement, what those experiences are.
No, personally, I do not have experience with doing that type of work. I definitely understand the dimensions, the parameters of purchase power agreements between an asset owner and an off-taker. I believe I may have to, a couple of folks I've talked to internally, I need to reach out to a broader set of folks, but my understanding is we don't have extensive experience in doing those types of contracting support.
And how about with commitment to sell forms and experiences with that? Would your answer be the same?
That would be the same, yes, ma'am.
Now, under Act 62, you mentioned that if you had questions about the utilities modeling, that you would ask the commission to ask the utilities to do different runs. Act 62 allows the consultant, the commission's consultant, to propound discovery to the utilities or to the parties. Do you have experience drafting discovery request, information request?
Yes, I do. Since I've started here at Synapse Energy Economics, I've been involved in a variety of different projects where we were crafting discovery questions. Specifically, we are supporting the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau as part of PREPA's, their municipal utility, submitted an IRP, an integrated resource plan, and I developed a set of discovery questions related to the utilities' load forecasts. In addition, I've recently, we have not yet submitted, but we've drafted discovery questions based on PEPCO in Washington, D.C., Potomac Electric Power Company. They've submitted a multi-year rate plan to the commission there, and my team here has developed discovery questions around their capital expenditure plan. They've recommended a variety of performance incentive mechanism structures. We've developed discovery for those as well. I also have developed and submitted discovery in the state of New York. Several utilities produced marginal cost of service studies, locational-based marginal cost of service studies as part of the New York REV proceedings. And we developed discovery on behalf of the clean energy parties to gather additional information from utilities on how those studies were conducted, the assumptions and the methodologies. And then my colleagues here have produced discovery for hundreds of proceedings in many, many jurisdictions. So we have extensive experience as a company, as an organization, submitting discovery, developing testimony and comments based on analysis of those discovery responses.
Thank you, Doctor. Do you or your colleagues have experience in helping or assisting or advising in drafting commission orders related to avoided cost and avoided cost methodologies?
We have, I believe we've done some direct drafting for the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau, but my understanding from talking to a colleague is that we have commented and provided input on those orders, but I believe our experience beyond Puerto Rico is fairly limited in terms of drafting direct orders for commissions.
I want to switch over a little bit, and we've spoken about some independence earlier, but I want these next series of questions will focus on independence, if we would, and any potential conflicts that there might or could be. You've mentioned that two of your colleagues have testified before the Public Service Commission. You've identified those dockets. Have you or anyone affiliated with your company ever served as an advisor, consultant, witness, or received compensation from, and I'm going to go through the parties in this case, if we could just discuss those. And first would be Duke Energy or any of its subsidiaries, whether in operating in South Carolina or operating in other states.
No. To the best of my knowledge, we have not, and we are in the process of doing an internal check, but I personally have not, and it's my understanding that no one in the company has received compensation from any of those utilities.
Okay. How about Dominion Energy or any of its subsidiary or affiliates? I'm saying subsidiary, I really mean affiliates. Anybody in the Duke or Dominion umbrella?
Again, I certainly personally have not, and to the best of my knowledge, no one here at Synapse has received compensation from Dominion or any of its subsidiaries.
And you indicated y'all are doing a conflicts check, and once y'all conclude that, you'll submit those to us, will you not?
Yes,
results.
We're working on we're working on the timeline of getting that to you by midday tomorrow.
Thank you. SCANA Corporation or SCE&G or any of the under the former umbrella of SCANA.
To the best of my knowledge, we have not been engaged in work or been compensated by those organizations.
The South Carolina Solar Business Alliance or any members of the South Carolina Solar Business Alliance.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Johnson Development Associates Incorporated.
Again, not to my knowledge.
Walmart Incorporated.
As far as I know, no, not. I don't have any knowledge of worker compensation from Walmart.
Nucor Corporation in South Carolina. It's Nucor Steel, South Carolina, but I think nationally in the public entity is Nucor Corporation.
To the best of my knowledge, no, we have not done work or been compensated by that organization.
Okay, I think we're getting into a couple here. South Carolina Coastal Conservation League. I think you've previously identified them?
Yes, we have done work and have received compensation. Well, they're funded through the Southern Environmental Law Center.
Okay.
So I believe we're contracted with the Southern Environmental Law Center, which collaborates with both Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and the Coastal Conservation League.
Okay. And those were the three dockets that you identified earlier from 2018, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
The South Carolina Energy Users Committee or any member of the South Carolina Energy Users Committee?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you get the list of lawyers that are participating in this docket?
Yes, I do have that list, and I have our contracts, our operations team reviewing this today.
Okay. And that'll be included in your conflicts check, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you tell us if you or your team members and your coworkers in your company have ever served as an advisor, consultant, witness, or received compensation from investor-owned utilities?
To the best of, I mean, I personally have received compensation from Green Mountain, Central Vermont Public Service, Green Mountain Power. This was a number of years ago. Certainly within the past 10 years, I have not. I don't believe that any of my colleagues have received compensation from investor-owned utilities, but that's certainly something I would need to verify.
Has Synapse Energy economics, I know there was a long list of entities that y'all represented. Were any of those investor-owned utilities? Just yes or no is fine.
I don't believe so. No, we tend to work for commissions, public advocates, nonprofits. To the best of my knowledge, we have not worked for investor-owned utilities.
How about municipal utilities or electric cooperatives?
To the best of my knowledge, I believe we have not worked for those. But again, I need to verify that with my colleagues.
Okay. And you mentioned y'all do for nonprofit entities. Y'all represent nonprofits.
That's correct.
Okay. Any industry or trade association representing electrical utilities, have you ever testified or consulted with them, or are you members of any trade associations representing electrical utilities?
To my knowledge, we are not, no.
How about industry or trade associations representing the solar industry? Have you represented or are you members of?
I don't believe we're members. We tend to stay away from joining those types of associations, but we have done work for the Solar Energy Industry Association in New York State, and there may be other jurisdictions as well. I would need to follow up on that.
And I think some of these next groups, just to finish out my list, so we are asking the same questions of each of our interviewees. You've referenced some of these, but worked with or advisor, consultant, witness for any state agency, industry, or trade or association representing the using and consuming public. In South Carolina, we have the Department of Consumer Affairs and the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff represent the consumer interest.
Yeah.
These would be organizations representing the consumer interest.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, we have not worked with those groups.
Okay. Any industry or trade association representing environmental advocacy groups?
We have worked for the Sierra Club, the Natural Resource Defense Council. I think that would fit within that category.
And I believe you've indicated that y'all have done some work with other regulatory utility commissions.
Correct, yes.
Do you have processes in place to ensure the independence of your company and anybody on the team that would be working on this project if you receive it?
We have a regular weekly meeting where we discuss conflicts of interest, and so we're a relatively small group. We've got 30-plus employees, and we will discuss projects, and if there's any potential for a conflict of interest, we will decline submitting to those opportunities. We have a rigorous peer review process in terms of the work products that we produce, where we are evaluating each other's work and in an effort to enhance the quality and independence of the final products. So I would say, and again, just the reputation of Synapse is quite strong in this arena. And that reputation has been built over decades of rigorous independent research and analysis. And we would bring that same ethos to the work if we were fortunate enough to support the important efforts that you are facing.
Do you have any reason, however slight or insignificant it may seem, to believe that you and your team cannot serve as a fair, impartial, or independent consultant in any of these dockets?
I have no concern. I again, as an academic, I bring to my work as a consultant high standards, ethical standards of conduct, and as a leader of this initiative within the company, I would expect that from and demand that of everyone that's on the team. So I am very confident that we would come to this work with a strong ethos of integrity and independence, and support your needs. And so I'm quite confident that we would come to this work with a strong ethic of independence.
If Synapse is selected as a consultant for the commission, can you commit that you and the team members would refrain from any unauthorized ex parte contact with the parties or others regarding issues in this docket? We have a pretty strong, the commission is under the Code of Judicial Conduct here, and we have some pretty strict rules and statutes governing or avoid ex parte communications. And those same prohibitions would apply to any consultant that we have.
Absolutely. We have adhered to those in other jurisdictions. We would certainly want to have a bit of a briefing in terms of the laws and regulations in South Carolina, but we have certainly adhered to those in other jurisdictions, and with a clear sense of what the expectations are, we would most certainly commit to meeting those standards.
Are you aware of any reason, however small, slight, minimal it could be, that would give this commission pause or concern about hiring Synapse as an independent consultant for these dockets?
No, I don't. I really don't have any concerns. As I mentioned, I'm relatively new to the organization, and I was drawn to the reputation that they have in this area, the scope of the skills and the knowledge that we would bring to bear. I'm quite confident that we would bring the analytical capabilities, the modeling that would we have got a very effective project management framework here, and I have no concerns that we would not be able to do this work in a way that would be of the utmost integrity and meet the needs of the commission.
Are you aware of any reason, once again, however small, slight, or minimal you may think it is, any inkling that would make it difficult for you and Synapse to advise this commission in an impartial manner and provide an impartial report?
No inclination that would be a problem.
Recently, as you have stated, some of the team members at Synapse have worked on dockets just last year that would or could pertain to some of the same issues that are going to go forward in this proceeding. Are you aware if you or any of your colleagues have worked on cases or adopted positions on issues expected to be addressed in these proceedings, such as avoided cost? And would any position advocated by your colleagues prevent Synapse and whoever's working on this case, would that impact the ability to advise this commission independently of those positions? And I reckon what I'm getting to is anyone so rooted on a position that they took in a previous case that they could not view those issues independently and objectively in the present cases?
Mm-hmm. To the best of my knowledge, these are a group of highly accomplished professionals, and they bring to their work a high degree of integrity And that integrity requires being independent and coming to new projects with clarity in terms of the client needs and their interests. And in this case, there's a clear need and interest to have an independent assessment of utility avoided cost calculations. And I'm quite confident that our team would bring that to bear if, again, we're fortunate to be chosen for this opportunity.
Dr. Latondre, I appreciate your attention and time and your responses to my questions, and I thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, those are all the questions I have at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Belser. Commissioner Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Latondre, welcome. It's good to have you with us. I'd like to delve into the relationship that Synapse Energy has with some of the named parties in the docket and ask you to respond if you could. I believe you've already acknowledged that the Southern Environmental Law Center and the South Carolina Coastal Conservation League have retained Synapse Energy Economics, Inc., I believe in 2009 to testify in the Dominion Energy docket, formerly known as South Carolina Electric and Gas Company. I believe that was docket number 2009-261E. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what was the docket number again? I apologize.
2009-261E.
Yeah, I do not have a complete list, but we have on multiple occasions participated in dockets in the state of South Carolina.
Yes, sir. I believe again in 2014, that was the net energy metering generic docket. And then again in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 in the Dominion Energy dockets on the annual fuel proceedings.
Yes, that's correct.
Those dockets also specifically involve the subject of avoided cost calculations offered to qualifying facilities under PURPA. If you were in the shoes of Dominion Energy, looking at that prior involvement, fairly recent involvement, and the number of involvements, would that concern you as someone that might be on the other side?
I'm sorry, if I was in the utilities situation, would I have concern?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. It's hard to speculate that I wouldn't. I'm not in that position. It's hard to walk in their shoes to determine whether or not that would be a concern.
Well, let me ask it this way.
I guess it's difficult for me to respond to that question with any meaningful response.
Let me ask it this way. Does Synapse Energy have any ongoing relationship with these parties that we discussed?
I don't. I would have to check, but I don't. I mean, I do. I'm not 100% sure whether we currently are engaged in a project. I believe perhaps we may be, but I'm not 100% sure on that. As you've seen from the record, we've been supporting these organizations for a number of years. It's likely that they would call on us again if a need arose. So I would say it's likely we've had a past relationship, and that relationship will likely persist going forward.
Well, the last interview that we conducted today. We had a conflicts letter from that firm located in Tallahassee, Florida, and they went to great lengths to advise us that if they become engaged by the South Carolina Public Service Commission, and I'm quoting now, we will not represent Apoplexis or any Walmart affiliate in any matters in South Carolina or North Carolina for at least 5 years following the conclusion of the dockets referenced above, end quote. So I guess if we wanted to still consider you or Synapse Energy, would you likewise make such a commitment? For example, would you be willing to sever your ties to these parties for at least 5 years so that that would eliminate the appearance of any kind of impropriety? Would you be willing to make that commitment on behalf of the firm?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the question, and I understand its significance. Although I'm not in a position in my current role to make that commitment to you at this point, but I would certainly explore that with our executive team to get back to you on that.
All right.
I hope you can appreciate. That I'm being honest. I can't make that commitment.
Sure.
In my current role.
I think it's a fair question because you would agree it's a fair question, wouldn't you?
Sure.
I think that we have to, delve into the details, and
absolutely.
I'm impressed with your background and qualifications, and I certainly think you have the requisite experience, but you could see how these kinds of issues could arise. And
yeah, and I will commit to you to bring this to our executive team to get you some feedback as soon as practical.
All right, and what our expectation would be is that you would put that in writing and send it in along with your conflicts check, just so we know where we stand. Fair enough?
Sure.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Irvin. Commissioner Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to have you with us, Dr. Latondre. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you for participating. I think Commissioner Belser has asked the bulk of the questions. I do have one I want to follow up with you on. I've asked this of other candidates seeking this position as well. One of the concerns that's come up in the past when we've had proceedings, our utilities use expensive data systems such as ProSim and ProMod, and some of the parties in these proceedings have expressed concern, not that it was not necessarily that the proceeding wasn't fair, but that they, I'm talking about certain interveners, didn't have the resources or access to that sort of data, and those systems are pretty expensive. So, therefore, what gets presented is the data that the utility and their witness that they put up on the stand usually testifies to. So, do you have those access to that type data and those type systems, or would you have to outsource that, if you will, or contract with someone? In other words, you being our consultant, would you need a consultant to yourself to bring this information forward?
No, we do have. That's one of the strengths of Synapse. Is we've got really we've got extensive system modeling capabilities within house. We use a model called Encompass, which is a production cost model, load flow model as well.
It's called Encompass. Encompass.
Yeah, ENCOMPAS. Encompass, yes. And we also have staff that are versatile with Plexos, which is another model that's used. But as I said earlier, our team has evaluated utility plans through IRP, their avoided costs measures, and the model runs. We've had extensive experience evaluating utility analysis. And so we are very adept at determining the appropriateness of the methodologies that they've deployed, detailed assessment, as I mentioned earlier, of the inputs, the assumptions that they use, and then we can also evaluate how they actually deployed the models. And we have the modeling capability in-house, but we'd also perhaps to save some money would be, as I mentioned earlier, develop the inputs and their parameter files and give those to utility and ask them to do additional runs. That's something we've done on a variety of occasions. And so I'm quite confident that we've got the expertise and the skill and the modeling wherewithal to really do a rigorous in-house assessment of the utilities models and approach. And if necessary, we do also have the capacity in-house to do modeling of regional grid systems as well.
So once you have the data request from the utilities, once you have the data request and have what you need, you basically, what you're telling me is you have the resources, sounds like in-house, to do this yourself.
Again, it's a matter of cost. I've understood from talking to my colleagues that it's more common to provide sensitivity analysis and inputs to the utilities. Say, you did it this way in your run. Here, would you please do another run assuming this other scenario? So I believe our first approach would be to work with the utility to try to have them deploy their model based on a set of different assumptions, and then look at the results, evaluate the results, and then I'd have to touch base with our modeling folks, but I do, we do have models, the production cost model in-house, and I just don't quite have a sense of the scale in terms of cost that it would require for us to acquire and configure those models for those particular cases.
Well, thank you for your answer. I think you were quite candid, but also an impressive answer. So thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Howard.
Doctor, good afternoon. I'd have a couple questions for you along a different line. First of all, let me tell you how sorry I am to hear about the demise of Green Mountain College. After all these years,
yes.
They closed in July.
They did, yes. Thank you. I appreciate the sentiment.
But apparently that's the way of a lot of small liberal art colleges in New England. Is that not true? Just finances.
Yeah, it's a challenging environment, yes. Thank you.
Let's talk about Go Solar Coach.
Sure.
Tell me about Go Solar Coach. What is it, and why am I asking you the question?
Sure. As I mentioned, I've had this dual career as an academic and as a consultant, and I've had a number of family members and friends who are thinking about having solar installed on their home or their business. And so I found that oftentimes it was difficult for homeowners to evaluate price proposals from different solar contractors. It's not like a standardized process where the customer who wants to put solar on their home or their business, and they get, say, 3 or 4 quotes from different solar installers. It's almost like comparing apples and oranges. So I had identified a need for someone to help homeowners and small business owners to simply evaluate solar cost proposals from different companies. So I developed a small service that supported homeowners and small businesses in doing that.
I have to admit, with some envy, the picture of your house. I mean, it's, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm going to the mountain in Vermont and live like Steve does.
Wow, well, you certainly did your homework.
I don't know that I can handle one of. But your home to me is the epitome of you practice what you preach. And apparently you have a passion for solar energy. I mean, the Go Solar is a blog. Your wife and your teenage daughters are pretty well involved in the whole concept of solar. And on your website, it says Steve wants to share the expertise and broader audience to accelerate the inevitable transition to a clean future. With that being said, with your passion for solar to that degree, do you feel that you could give an unbiased, independent decision on solar energy or renewables?
I mean, I do. I do believe, solar has many benefits, and that really is kind of on a personal side, my passion for solar. But I do believe I could still, I have done in my work, in my consulting, that evaluating other technologies and other resources. So I do believe I can maintain an independent view on the technologies that are available to us to meet our demand for electrical energy.
Tell me about V2G.
Sure. So vehicle to grid, it's a concept I developed with a colleague from the University of Delaware, whose name is Willett Kempton. And vehicle to grid is a concept where we think of electric vehicles not only serving as charging from the electric grid, but they also are serving as providing services to the grid through a bidirectional interconnection with the grid, where the utility or the homeowner could take energy from the battery from the vehicle, or to use it in case there's a blackout in their home, or charge the vehicle when there's available energy. And then we've also done some analysis about vehicle-to-grid technology providing grid services as well.
I have to admit, we have a lot in common. I too like hoppy, microbrew beer. Grateful Dead is something else, but I don't think I'm gonna leave the snowboarding up to you. But thank you very much for the interview, and I enjoyed it very much, and good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Commissioner Belser, you said you had another question? Cut your mic on, Commissioner. There you go.
Dr. Latondre, I was just curious, when you were talking about providing the inputs and asking the utility to do another run on their modeling, how long, if you were to provide the utility with the, I don't know if it goes in a spreadsheet or however you provide the inputs to the utility, what is a reasonable amount of time for the utility to do the run? If you were to give it to it, when would you expect a response?
I think typically 2 weeks would be a reasonable amount of time to do that analysis.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One final question.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we selected your firm to assist the commission as an independent expert, Could you staff up quickly and be available to complete the project within a timely fashion? We have a statutory deadline we're trying to meet, and I'm sure you saw that in the act. Would you be?
I did, yes. No,
Think you'd be?
yeah, we are, as I mentioned, we're a relatively small firm. We're very nimble and flexible, and we would be prepared to support this effort upon your request.
And that would include preparing a formal opinion and report at the appropriate time.
Yes, we would certainly adhere to the schedule that you are under and be prepared to deliver the products in a timely fashion for review and comment, and then finalizing any documents or data that would meet your requirements.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams, are you out there anywhere?
I'm out here, Mr. Chairman. Sir, I have one question for you, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I understand through Commissioner Howard's line of questioning that you are a proponent of solar energy and renewable energy, for that matter. I'm just curious on your opinion of the origin of the conflict between proponents of renewable energy, solar energy, and the IOU's perspective about how to get there, the best practice in using
I'm sorry, the quality is, could someone repeat the question? The quality of that, I couldn't hear your question. I apologize.
Yeah, you're not coming through real clear, Commissioner.
Can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm curious to know, in your opinion, where does the conflict arise between the solar industry and the IOU in regards to the best practices in calculating avoided costs?
So the question is, where is the conflict between utility interests and the solar energy interests in terms of integration of solar on the grid?
Right, and specifically calculating avoided costs.
Well, I mean, I think there's an inherent interest in the utility to minimize the avoided cost calculations that they have to pay to qualifying facilities. And on the other side, those owners of qualified facilities would want to receive the highest level of compensation possible for those resources that they bring to the grid. And it requires, a rigorous analysis to really determine what the marginal costs or those avoided costs are, and that's where Synapse has brought their expertise to evaluate utility proposals and to also assess the reasonableness of alternatives.
How can this commission be sure that your company will provide the most accurate evaluation of those costs, considering there are so many differences of opinion? What does your company bring to the table that will give this commission comfort to know that you will ensure, you and your company will ensure that we have the best information available when we have to make a decision?
As I indicated earlier, we are a group of professionals that are committed to doing high quality work and analysis, and we've been doing this work for well over 20 years. And I think our reputation, I know our reputation in the industry is very strong. for doing quality, independent work and analysis, and that has really led to long-standing relationships with different public service commissions and Office of Public Advocate. So I would suggest that our reputation and the long-standing work that we've done for our clients is testament to the independence and the quality that we bring to each new engagement.
All right, sir. I appreciate you sharing that with me. One final question. In your opinion, is this calculation about avoided cost simply about a math? Is it a mathematical equation? Is it as simple as that? Or are there other elements, in your opinion, that must be considered?
Well, it is an engineering and economic analysis, and it really is fundamentally driven by the resource mix which currently exists on the grid. And so it really is fundamentally an engineering economic question. What does it cost to deliver an incremental kilowatt or kilowatt hour of energy to the system? And we often distinguish avoided costs by season, peak, off-peak. So it really, in my assessment, is an engineering economic question that we're seeking to answer.
All right. Thank you, sir. No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioners, anything else? Just for me, Dr. Latondre, just one quick question. Do you or any of your colleagues own stock in either the regulated utilities or any of the other parties that are in these dockets?
I personally do not. I mean, I do own mutual funds, and I'm not aware of any of the mutual funds that own stocks in any utilities. I am not aware of any employees of Synapse that own stock in utility companies, but obviously I don't have full information there. I could certainly inquire further for the commission.
I think we'd like to know. So if you could include that in the conflicts list and letter, that would be helpful to us. Okay.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioners, anything else? Dr. Latondre, we appreciate your time and your interest, and thank you for your very detailed answers. And if there are no further questions, then we will be adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you again for your time, and best of luck. Appreciate it.